Hey, well, welcome to the Dream Labs, Dr. Contrast Live. I hope everybody's doing well. Just thought I'd take a moment to introduce this stream today. The subject of today's stream is going to be a pretty interesting one, I think, for me. In this sense, it's going to be a bit of an experiment. I'm going to try a little bit of mixed media work here. A little bit of watercolor, a little bit of marker, a little bit of drawing in pencil, and just putting some pieces together to see if we can put a nice little emotional sketch together here of this 1936 Auto Union C2 version, piloted by Hans Stuck back in the 30s. Very powerful V16 machine that ran the Formula One circuit in Europe. And just so we just kind of give it a run here, I thought I always establish a little line drawing to get it started. And I'm going to go back in and do a real nice loose piece of trying to just capture some of the essence of the sketch. Very gesturally. Keep it that way if I possibly can with the watercolor and so forth that I'm going to add to it and multimedia work. And at the end, too, I think as this thing gets completed here, I brought out a variety of sketches that I've done in the same vein over the course of some time here. I just thought I'd kind of a little bit of a portfolio of what's coming up in future Think here on my streams on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays. So let's get started here. I'm just going to start with some Stadler watercolor pencils. I'm just going to lay down some tone here, and we'll start using this as a watercolor base. Let's kind of put a little bit of color in here. Just pardon me as I quietly just kind of put a little bit of tint. Come across this form here, just splash in a little bit of color. And then we'll watch what happens. We're going to watercolor here. We just add a little bit of water to this thing. So we're just going to lay that in just a touch. Let's see if we can get this thing to kind of drift a little bit here for us. A bit darker through here. See how these work. As I said, this is an experiment for me. I've not used these guys a lot. I've used them, but very sparingly. So let's see what it comes up with here once we lay this in. Let's see what happens with that right there. So let's put a little bit of water to this guy and see what we get. Aha! Soak it up just a bit here. Get rid of some of the pencil strokes. Keep it nice and gesturally. Go around this guy. Put a little bit underneath here. Sneak in a little bit of the background underneath. And just walk in a little bit of wash. Yeah, it's not bad. Let that dry a little bit and we'll come back to it in just a second. But just laying in some real high impact. A little bit of watercolor study back here to get this guy rolling. You know, let's see if we can do a little bit of this. Get this thing to kind of blot back a little bit and see if we can kind of get back to paper just a touch. A little more exciting in here. Yeah, there you go. There we go. Just get some of that out of the way. And we'll let that dry, come back in a little bit more. And I'm just going to get rid of some of this. And let's try this. I'm going to go through a whole series of palette things here to kind of work with this guy. Let's lay a bit of this color in. See what that does. Into the shadow side of this form. Keep it nice and lucid. Maybe bring just a little bit up on top here, just a little bit through that core line. And just wash this in. This might go very quickly here. So let's see what takes place. Oh yeah. Just enough of that just to be dangerous. That's cool. Just to kind of run that through. Just a nice little simple tint. That's interesting. Very cool. Huh. And let's put a little more tone in this thing. While I'm at it, I'm just going to lay in some of this foundation here. So some of that in place. Let that dry just a touch. See what happens when we come back in again. And let's just do this. Let's put a bit of shadow down inside this guy too. See what that begins to look like. And once that other piece on the side tire here dries up a little bit, I'm going to come back in and get that one too. Oh yeah. A little bit of ground shadow in here. I can come back in a little bit and tighten down that shadow. Let's just get that right underneath the machine there. There we go. Get that into place. There we go. A little shadow. Get that down in place here. Let's see here. Let's go back and put a little bit more tone back inside this body form here if we can. Just keep it nice and generic. Let's get a little bit of color back in through here. A little more wash on the suspension system here. And this little wheel pod area, let's get that in place. There's a little bit of that, a little bit of that. Soak that down just a touch. That's nice. A little more tone back in through here if we can. Come back and tighten down the shadow just a bit. And letting that in. That's pretty interesting how it all begins to come together here. Again, just a simple series of passes here to get it to kind of function and work with this. I'm going to let this set for a minute here. Let this guy dry up just a bit. Take that brush out of action for a moment here. And just land some interesting little, see what happens here with some multimedia work here. Let's see what happens when we add some marker to this thing. More expressive than that. Coming together all right. So a little deeper with that now. Try number 4, kind of bring this down just a touch. Here's a broader side of the pen here as we get. That's a little quicker. Let's slowly build up some of these surfaces, some of these textures to work with here. And see what happens. Again, really interesting experiment for me. Multimedia work. Never have used this process before, so we'll see what begins to take place. Function through it on marker on illustration board. Sometimes very successful, sometimes not. Let's see, let's go back to this number 2 gray. Get these wheel areas in here. Keep it real spontaneous. There we go. That's fun. Interesting. Let's get a bit more. Let's get a bit more tone in this thing. Let's see if we can come down to about a number 7. We can get these wheels to tint a little bit more for us here. Yeah, it's going to be better. A little bolder. Let's go to a lighter stroke here. Get this in. Yeah. Sideways just for a moment here. Get that in place. And again, back in through here. Keep that rim alive for some drawing detail once we get back into it. There we are. That'll come out of it pretty nicely here. These wheels in place. Again, a little more lucid. Keep that kind of loose for the time being. Let's get this guy just a bit more here, a little more guts on this guy. There it is. Oh, right in there. Let's get this backside tire now. There we are. Starting to come together here, guys. Just putting in a little theme here. And let's get a little more contrast in these guys. Just upside down for a moment here. Get this down to ground. A shadow. As stated before, mixed media, a little bit of marker, a little bit of watercolor. See what begins to happen with this guy. And that shadow through. Now, see if we can get rid of some of this here. We can kind of come back in and pick up some of this. With this wheel completed, some of these forms and shadows all in place. We're pretty well set with that. We'll let that go just for a minute here. Yeah, it's coming along pretty nicely. Interesting, a lot of fun. Just a little change of pace here. While we're at it, let's go back to this black marker, get that down. Yeah, let's get a little bit of that number 6 gray in there too. Inside that rim just a bit. There we are. Let's try a little more of that watercolor here. Just got to throw some of this in place now. A little more texture in this guy. A bit more of a wash in here. One more shot at it here. It's a bit more surface in this guy. Let that dry just a bit. a little bit of detail underneath this guy. Let's just do this here. A little bit of some detail work on this thing. Be real nice and lucid here. Just adding some little engine venting pieces here. A little bit of instrumentation to get that cockpit kind of blend in here. Let's start to evaluate that. So it's starting to look like a little bit here. We've got some good stuff going on here, gang. Let's see. We get this little bit of a, let's get this numerical, this number piece in place here. Number 4 in there. Put that aside for more. It's going to get a little older with this pen here. Get this thing to work for us here. It's a really interesting little study here. Very good experiment for me, just to see if this function is going to work and how it will work for future reference here, just in case. Go back in and get this number 4 gray here. Down here, coming along. Let's get that number 2 gray in there, just a little bit more up on top here, just to kind of finish off the surfaces we're working with here. Still trying to keep it very spontaneous. Groundwork in this thing. Yeah, it's coming along pretty nicely there. Not bad. Just a neat little study. Let's see if we can get a little more impact on some of the strapping around the helmet here. We can go from that. Just got to put it in pieces here. Let's do a little bit of this. There, that. Let's get that lighter gray. Get a bit more contour from where the helmet is. Just kind of get that little bit of surface change in the arms. And a little bit of this windscreen cockpit up on top here. So a bit of shadow, a little bit of sky tone and instrumentation just a bit. And I'll just kind of let that sit there for a moment and see what we can come up with here. Let's just do this. Let's see if we can come up with just a little bit more ground line here to kind of settle this thing just a bit. It'd be kind of fun to do this too, just to see what happens. A little bit of that. Just a little bit more tint in this thing. Not bad. So reflected that into the actual wheelhouse itself. And there we are. That's kind of blocking it in just real loosely here, gang. We're kind of putting it together. Now I'm going to slow it down just a bit here. Let me take a moment to grab a pencil and let's see if we can get a little bit more contour detail into this thing for us here. Let's see what we got. Let's see what happens here. We have this. Come back and pick up a little bit of highlight on some of this stuff now. And the wheel cover, the knockoffs here. There we go. Turn this around here just a bit. Let's get this. A little bit of tone there. Now, slow this down just a bit here. Drawing definition back in here just for defining some things here. Let's see, it's number 4 gray here. Get this ground plane in. And let's see if we can put a little bit of temper in this thing here. Hang on a second here, gang. I'll be right back. Let's go to the storehouse here and take a look at some of this material here we've got. Okay. Got it right here. Let's do just a little touch of this and get a little bit of highlight on this guy, and we'll call it almost complete little study here. Again, this is going to be a pretty good experiment for me here. So we can kind of put that aside just for a moment here. And we'll just do a little bit of this, see what happens here. Got a little bit of sparkle to it. And let's see, I'll call that a day, I think, gang. There it is, a little watercolor study. Mixed media. Hey, Chip, Spirit Spaceship. Hey, how you doing there, Chip? Good to have you on board. I just thought I'd, if you missed the beginning of the stream, I just thought I'd put together a little program here. Pardon me as I reach across here. And a little bit of a study on some mixed media. So a little bit of watercolor. It's a weird spaceship. A little bit of watercolor, a little bit of marker, a little bit of watercolor pencil. Just a nice variety of systems here. It's more of an experiment for me at this stage of the game, where I'm beginning to see if this thing is actually going to function the way it should, and hopefully we'll get a little bit of input out of this thing. Let's see if I can kind of straighten up that highlight just right here. There we go. Get that down. Get that little shadow down inside there as well. So just again, real quick study here, Chip, on putting together a real quick study on, again, mixed media, just to put some pieces together here to see if it's anything going to be valid or be worthwhile working with in the future. Just a real experiment for me here. So just for what it's worth here, Chip. If you're with us, what do you think? It's looking pretty good. It's an interesting little experiment here, as I said. I think I'll show you some things here in up and coming minutes here. This is going to put a little bit of detail back into this roadway side here. Really unique. Very interesting approach. I mean, it's not, in all sincerity, this is the first time I've ever done something like this. I'm usually a more traditional watercolorist, using the actual watercolor itself, but this has been more of a mixed media system where you start to look at different things to work with here. Hey, David Pinter, joined late, got to see that car at the Audi Forum. Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? It's a neat machine. That did as well, David. A very stunning piece of equipment. But again, experiment here today was just to get a really good feel for maybe some mixed media stuff to come along in the future. Let me just kind of dress up this guy just a bit more here. Just a more hot spot in this guy. Get rid of some of this. And again, some of this over the top, and just a little bit more drama in this thing here. Just let's see, there it is. And just for what it's worth, let's try to drop that shadow up just a bit more. Pull that back just a touch. A little more animated back and through here. Out front. So there is a little quick and dirty 30-minute special on, again, I use 3 combinations here: watercolor pencil, some marker, and some tempera. So I don't know if that works for you guys, but what do you think, gang? Hey, good to have you on board, David. Thank you so much for joining us here. I'll let you be the judge of this. Is this something that we can take a look at in the future reference here, just some little watercolor studies, and going a little further with it? I've got some things I want to show you here too as well. So I think there it is in terms of that. Let's get rid of this guy here. See what happens with this background, if it held on to it. Okay, let's get this watercolor up. There it is. Oh yeah, that turned out pretty good. No, that's not bad at all. There she is. A little bit of a watercolor study, Auto Union. Interesting, David Pinter. Is that on watercolor? Yes, it is on watercolor board, Dave. It's a very really risky thing to do, as far as it's a little rough on the surface, but I think you get a nice balance of some content into it, and it changes some of the tooth, so it looks pretty good. I mean, I'm happy with the approach. I mean, I think if more and more. So let me just do a little bit of tuning in here, gang. Sign that guy. There it is. A little quick and dirty. So there you go. Hey, Justin Broski. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you. Risky business. Hey, thanks for joining here, Justin. It's good to have you on board again. I just went through about a 20-minute or 30-minute little study. I had a line drawing I set up with this. This is an experiment for me to see what might take place with. Let me just take a moment here, gang. Sorry. Tune into some of this detail just a bit more. Some of this and then some of those areas put in place. Some of this stuff down in there. There we are. There it is. There it is. A little more texture in some of this thing. There's a little bit of shadow in this guy. There it is. That's right. There we are. Very quick little spontaneous watercolor study here, based on just looking at some pencil work, watercolor pencil, which I've not used before, which is kind of an interesting little experiment for me, and a little bit of marker and some media work on top of all that. So again, I just wanted to see what would take place. It's not a bad approach to it here. I think it's a future reference. We can kind of work with it. What do you think, Justin? Does it make sense to you? Risky is right, but you got to take a chance every now and then to see if it works. So, but very, very cool stuff to deal with. Works good to me. So I think that's going to be a good base to work from for future reference. I've got a whole bunch of stuff I'd like to work with on technique change, like marker, watercolor, pencil sketches, you name it. So I'm all over the map in terms of what that looks like. But based on this, I thought I'd go back and show a little bit about some portfolio stuff here. Let me put this aside, let it dry. We'll bring it back up at the end of the stream here. I've got some things I want to just show you here. Might be coming up here just for what it's worth. Let me clean this area up here just a bit. We've got there's some multimedia stuff here. Some Bentley work done. Let's put that up on top there. some Lamborghini work being done. Again, multimedia, and this is a Ferrari. Let me see if I can move these over just a bit. There we go. Again, mixed media, but at the same time, I think important enough to take a look at in terms of what might be coming down the pike as far as approaches go. This is a Bentley Speed 8 that it's a combination of a lot of different materials. For example, marker pastel, a little bit of watercolor in there as well. So it's a little bit of sneak job all the way through. Oh my, that Rari. Yeah, Ferrari. A little watercolor is kind of neat. That's a real fast. It's on a different kind of paper though, David. It's not quite. It's not a board. It's more like a paper. Berlinetta super fast. Just a little sketch, then laid in that little bit, just a value, some little bit of backdrop on it, and that was it. And the Bentley, yeah, it's kind of fun stuff. And then again, these are the kind of things as a result of doing this stuff. Let's go back to this for a moment. As a result of that, I just want to experiment with some typical approaches to can we take a combination of materials and make it really sing? For example, this guy. Let me move this up just a bit. Over there. You see that all right? Everybody okay? There we are. And then this little Lamborghini study. This is all marker pastel here. So there's a variety of approaches here. Let's get these guys out of the way. Unless you have any questions or concerns here, all of them really. I'd agree. Nice. I mean, it's just fun. I mean, these were done very quickly. Pencil sketch down or pen sketch down, adding a little bit of media into it. And I think what I want to really get into today, as far as the stream is concerned, the Lebo's background is awesome. How'd you pull that off? The background is interesting. That's all pastel. And the great thing about pastel, Chip, is that you lay it all down there, and then some of these are circles and that's erased out of it. So you kind of get a lot of a very different technique to it all the way through. This is all marker. There's a little bit of watercolor in here. This is all watercolor, obviously, but I really am tied into, as David well knows from times gone by, I'm really tied into changing tempo, experimenting with certain things, and taking different approaches to problem solving here. I think this is why I wanted to show you, first of all, this auto union sketch in watercolor first is another approach to take a look at just a nice little line drawing, a very simple technique, then pulling that off into things that we've done and hopefully going to do in the future once we get some feedback from the audience, and you guys are going to really have you done in the Nissan GTR? Not yet. In fact, I've got that on the list too. Justin, that's a good point. I've got some GTR stuff to do. I've got some Jaguar stuff to do, F-Type series. So there's a lot of things coming down the line here. But I really have to be honest with you too. I think I don't want to get caught up in doing every stream with car stuff. I like to move things around: architecture, watercolor, logo work, you name it, watercolor, landscape design, architecture, product design. I move it around quite a bit so the audience gets a chance to see what takes place with just changing media, changing gears, and changing approaches. It keeps it fresh and alive. I think that's one of the most important things I want to get across too. Keeping it fresh and alive. I don't want to get into a rut in terms of, well, I'm only good at this or that. I'm not good at a lot, but I want to keep it pretty flexible in terms of putting pieces together. So it just really interesting how, to me, changing pace maintains a confidence level, and it also challenges you too to do better. So let's get rid of these guys. This is what's coming. Some additional stuff I've got here. Let's kind of lay them up here. This is an original pencil sketch of that same machine. This turned out to be this is a photograph of a huge piece I did for this Audi C6. This is Hans Stuck. His nickname was the Mountain King at Monaco. Just a nice little pencil sketch, Prismacolor pencil sketch done. I think the original was done at 24 by 60, so it was a really large piece. So that's in the mix. This, going back again and changing technique, this was another piece that was done some time ago. This is Rene Dreyfus and the Bugatti Hill Climb. This again is all a little bit of watercolor back here, and all marker pastel. So again, a combination of materials, really interesting to work with here. And again, the technique changes and the approach changes. And I think, quite frankly, when it's all said and done too, the change of pace really kind of causes a growth phenomenon. In other words, you make some mistakes, you fail a little bit, but that's where the success level comes in. So I think I want to be sure today, in working with the stream, to show you some of the past work and some of the present work we just did with that audio union. It all builds. Sometimes you hit it, sometimes you don't. But this again is a multimedia piece. Let's go put that aside. Here's a couple of little pieces done. for a client base. This was done for a Corvette C4, C5. Interesting little piece of graphics where you get back into, again, multimedia, pastel marker, a little bit of watercolor in some areas here, some tempera. Mixing the materials up and doing some neat stuff. So what do you think so far, gang? Is this helping? Making sense? Let's get some feedback from you all here, just what we're looking at. Nobody comments at all. It's it's a very demanding, yet at the same, it's a demanding science in one hand, but it's also liberating in another, because you're starting to experience some things that grill bra. Yeah, how about that? That was a client's suggestion. So how about that, huh? And then the other one we did for this is a truck version, a variation on theme here for the GMC series, the Sierra. Again, same process again. A lot of real elusive materials in terms of, again, pastel, a little bit of watercolor in there, and some tempera. A lot of different approaches to the problem-solving system here. What's your opinion on the Corvette Stingray? You refer to the new one, Justin? The new C8? Just I'll hang on a moment for a response there. Yeah, I think that might, I'll be very biased here. I worked for General Motors design staff for 15 years of my career, Justin. I started that in my studios back in the late 70s when we did a program called the Four-Rotor Corvette. And I'll show you some of that stuff in later streams or if you're tuning in. But that program started midship back in the 70s. And quite frankly, it took us 30 years to get there, but I think the current C8 is an absolute beast. It's beautifully well done, a lot of time invested in it, and you can't beat the price point. And I think the character is finally up to standards. I think it's a Ferrari. Yeah, it is. I saw one the other day, Justin, coming down the road. It was a jet black front three-quarter coming at me, and I thought it was a 488, 458 Italia. It was really, really interesting. The whole hip rear section area looks really muscle-like, and I think that's great. So, from my point of view, having been involved in that program for almost all my days at GM, I'm really pleased and excited to see it out on the road. That is a great statement. So, let's move along here. There it is. Here's a little watercolor study again of a Lancia Aurelia, very interesting little coupe, very different approach to it again all watercolor. Not a fan of Corvette. Yeah, I think you're right. I got to the place, Justin. Some of the older stuff all the way through the C6. I was a chief designer in the C6 program, and after a while it got pretty boring in terms of not enough facelifting, especially the 4 or 5. Maybe 2, 3, and 4 just really changed, and nothing changed in 10 to 12 years, and just got a little bit laborious on the marketplace. Again, back to this again, really a full watercolor study on Lancia. Really a lot of drawing texture back. And again, I've always said this, no matter what the technique is that I'm working with in my streams, I really want to stress this every time I get together and go through the process. And that is simply this, that you can have all the media in the world. You can lay down a watercolor wash. You can put all the elements in, but it doesn't start to really hold together until you start to draw back into it. That's what made this guy, as weak as it is and as fast as it was done, a little bit more of a mystery in terms of the line drawing was set. We put some washes in to kind of give a little bit of contour and some character, but it came back down to going back in and drawing some of the details out of the form to get the thing to read for us. So that's a very important part of the whole process here. So why we're in the middle of the stream here doing some really neat stuff with mixed media material. So that's again a watercolor study here. Anybody any opinions so far? I mean, I just want to make sure that as we go through these guys from sketch to sketch or from stream to stream, that it's making sense for you and you're getting some things out of it as much as I am from your input coming back to me, which is really greatly appreciated. I'm really a big fan of that all the way through. It looks great. It makes sense. Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Justin. Again, I hope all things are good in Missouri. And really, really appreciate you, Chip, and David and the gang out there working with that. Super. So let's go back here. This is interesting. We'll finish it up with this. This is an interesting little pencil sketch. Again, not a lot of multimedia. It's a very simple line study here, so to speak, but this has an interesting history to it. When I was working for Tasman Motorsports Group back in the 90s and early 2000 series, we did a whole study on Lola chassis work and some Reynard chassis work for what might be the future reference of IndyCar. So these are some of the variety of pencil sketches that was submitted to them to look at potential future processing for IndyCar systems. No, it's closed cockpit, very flat rear platform. This relied on a very almost like a boxer type David Pinter, I remember the blue foam model. Yeah, you remember that? That was pretty interesting, David. That thing, that foam model came out of that whole process there. This looks like something you would see in Tron. Yeah, well, interesting that you brought that name up, Tron, Justin, because Sid Mead, I'm sure you're familiar with him. He was my drawing and rendering instructor for all 5 years I attended the Center for Creative Studies before I went on to General Motors design staff. And you're right, David. This series of sketches generated that fifth scale model that you saw in my studios downtown. Interesting thing to look at. But again, another example of doing very much getting a maximum amount of things out of a very minimal approach to gesture work and the like. And final comments and generating shape and form. So that's the IndyCar piece we did. Let's go back to this guy to finish it all up. So I'm just going to rely on you. What do you think for future reference? Should we try more of this stuff? A little more multimedia work, laying down like a pencil sketch or a ballpoint pen sketch and throwing a bit of watercolor into it. If that's something you'd like to see me do more of, and not only not a mold variety, but then the actual maybe product design work. And some architecture. Very simple process to work with, but I think it relies on one simple thing, and I think that's the most important aspect of today's stream. It relies on the extreme sensitivity of doing some really good drawing work. I think that's what makes it happen. And as you well remember, David, the stronger your drawing skills are, the stronger your rendering skills are going to become. They just work in harmony. That really sends out a real strong signal all the way through, guys. So I think it'd be a lot of fun to kind of take on some different subject matter here in future streams. And if some commission work comes in, I'll be sure to utilize that as well on the process. Anybody, any comments here at all in closing? Likes, dislikes, makes an impact. Don't go through it. Go back to the basic sketches. I mean, changing. You're part of the team here, and I think it's really important for me to hear from you about how you feel about what's being done here. Anybody, please feel free. Yeah, that's good to know, Justin. The watercolor mix. I mean, watercolor to me is an extremely powerful medium. I've always had, oh no, keep going with this. This is cool. Thanks, Chip. No missiles, huh? We're gonna add some missiles next time around. But let me go back to basic premise here. I've always believed that to me, watercolor is one of the most unique aspects of creativity. Because the reason I like watercolors, as I said when I started the sketch here, when I laid out the little line drawing, what's interesting about it is you have to make really quick decisions. You cannot hesitate in it. You can't sit back and say, oh, gee, I hope this works. You lay it down there, and you have to think 5 or 6 steps ahead about what's coming next. So when you lay down a wash, for example, the roller under the body form was laid down, let it dry, come back in and do another pass at it. So you're building a lexicon or a layering system to get these things to work. But watercolor has always been an intriguing medium for me. I've done a lot of fine art stuff in watercolor, which in fact I might do that. Maybe one of the streams just dedicate some of the watercolor stuff done in architecture, like old castles and some landscape work and old barns and the like. I just really enjoy that. To me, it's very relaxing to work with. So I'll keep after this and see what happens as a result of going through it all. And as far as today's stream is concerned, this is a very quick exercise, and I just didn't want to take too much time here. More of an experiment to see what would take place with this combination of materials. So I think it worked out pretty well, and I really appreciate the fact that you've tuned in here, gang. So anybody, any closing comments or questions or concerns you might have before we wrap it up here? Feel free, anybody. This is your game. All right, very good. You're good, Chip and Justin. How about you, David? Any closing commentary at all about what you'd like to see happening or a commentary? Please. I got to head into a meeting, so nice. Hey, thanks very much, Chip. Thanks for joining in. I appreciate it. Have a great day in the meeting, and have a great weekend as well, Chip. So let me do this, gang. Let's kind of wrap this thing up. And again, if you have any questions about things you want me to work on or any issues about drawing systems and the like, I'm good. Nice to see some of the archives. Yeah, thanks, David. It's good to have you on board, believe me. So please drop me a note at my email address at jim@drcontrast.com. If there's some things you want me to work on, or you have any questions or concerns I can help you with, I'd be more than happy to do that. Secondly, those of you who are interested in drawing programs, for example, I have a digital drawing program called Dr. Contrast and the Dream Labs. Please visit my website at drcontrast.com if you have any interest. And the last thing I'd like to, not one of the last, but second to last thing, I'd like to make a comment as well too. Please, if you're joining me on Twitch, my programs here and streaming on Twitch, please pass the word along to your friends who might be interested in drawing skills. I'd love to build my audience with people like yourself who are very, very wholesome and very helpful for me day to day in working with this whole process. So please pass the word along that I'm on Twitch, and my time factors are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm going to try to go to 2 o'clock every day now, keep it more consistent. But pass the word along that I'm on live on TV, doing a lot of different things every single day. So once again, gang, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me. I wish I'll have a great weekend. Again, Justin, thanks for tuning in. I really thank you for following me yesterday. It was very kind of you to do so, and I hope you're having fun, as much fun with this as much as I am having fun putting it all together for the audience here, so people are viewing in. So again, gang, I almost sign off with this. I think it's very important to kind of deal with, because to me it's the most important part of the stream. Is never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. Take care, and we'll see you next Tuesday. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.